If there's anything constant like the sun rising in the morning and setting in the evening, it's that the concept of taxes annoy me to no end. I will always say yes to pizza, and gaming journalism is always going to be a source of disdain that will never not be annoying. You've heard it before, that gaming journalists flat out dislike the very audience they've been hired to serve, because all gamers are problematic evil people. We're all just demons that need saving from ourselves apparently, but remember that gamers don't have to be your audience because gamers are over. That's a now infamous article from GameIndustry.biz that is now 12 years old as of this video being made. It was written by a games journalist named Leigh Alexander. It's also an article that perfectly encapsulates where the game industry has gone in since 2014, when this Leigh Alexander wrote that piece. I'll get into that article in a second, but the reason that this video exists is because that same Leigh Alexander, in case you don't know, they have a game that they actually wrote recently that actually came out. It's called Aphelion. You probably haven't heard of it, you likely will never play it, and when you get into the nitty-gritty of why a game like this exists in the first place, you then start to realize that at the core of this entire story, it all comes down to two very crucial things. One is forcing behaviors that these people want, and two is that it's state-funded propaganda. You see, Aphelion follows two lovers named Ariane and Thomas. They crash land on a planet called Persephone, and they are tasked with finding a new suitable home for humanity after climate change. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. Yes, climate change has ravaged the Earth's entire way of life in this story. Did I forget to mention this Aphelion game is funded by the ESA? Yeah, the European Space Agency helped fund Aphelion, which further details how this whole game came together in the first place. So Aphelion is made by Don't Nod. They're the people behind games like Life is Strange and the weirdly, actually pretty good game called Vampire, which to this day, I have no idea why they haven't made a sequel to Vampire, because that was an actual good game that had a real audience. But instead of a sequel where you play a doctor turned vampire who wrestles with his moral conundrums, I guess you instead have Aphelion. Great. A game that, as you can see from the Steam charts here, peaked at just 219 players at launch and has since just trickled down since then. Apparently, Don't Nod has sold somewhere close to less than 2,000 copies of Aphelion on Steam alone, which is laughably bad considering that Don't Nod, well, they're not exactly a small studio. I wouldn't call them AAA, I guess, but they're not exactly an indie studio of like two people working out of someone's basement either. So the numbers of Aphelion's player counts, they are, concerning. But it's because the game is not only, not very good, but that it's written as both propaganda and by someone who genuinely hates the gaming audience that they are catering to, which never really made any sense to me at all. Why continue to cater to or exist within a space that you hate? This would be like me saying that I hate all my subscribers or something, which I don't, but if I did, then why would I even be doing YouTube? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you chose to exist within this space. You willingly decided to talk about video games, yet you hate these people that you continue to cater to then. Why? Is it just to force the behaviors? Is that what this is all about, or is it just money? Maybe the truth is, somewhere in the middle. Because this just continues to happen. You play a game or you read a review, and before, that was really it. Now these days, it feels different. Not necessarily worse, I guess, in every case. Maybe not universally broken, but different enough that you do end up coming to the same question no matter which avenue you entered in from. You just start to wonder and ask, who is this actually for? So Aphelion is a game that some outlets praised for its direction and themes. Others were critical of its pacing and mechanics because you, climb a lot in this game and walk a lot. There's no combat and the stealth works half the time, maybe at best. There are aliens in it, but they look very generic. They're like weird digital black snake things with red spiky bits for faces. The entire game is just basically beating you over the head saying that climate change is bad. The game also stars two people, like I said before, Thomas and Ariane. Unsurprisingly, you play as Thomas for about 30% of the game. And the real main character is Ariane. Wow, who could have saw that one coming for like the 5th time? The game was also meant to come out apparently in December 2026, but then randomly upped dropped its release date and then came out in April instead. Probably, I'm guessing, because Donut recently also secured a deal to make a game based on a major Netflix IP. Probably Stranger Things, who knows, so they probably just cut the development on Aphelion early and then just shipped it out and left it to die. But when you look deeper into this whole thing of how games like this get made and who ends up writing them, like, you do start to see a pattern forming. That the influence of what gets said by places and how it gets said not only allows for access with early copies and whatnot, but that the narrative surrounding a game like Aphelion, it just feels fake. Look at butwhythough.com. Yes, that's actually the name of that website, I'm not kidding, but this is their review of Aphelion. They call the game one of the best science fiction stories in any medium, which is a crazy amount of praise. This review literally believes that this game is somehow better or rivals Mass Effect, Star Wars, or even Star Trek. The entire review, however, it reads more like an ad placement that was paid by the ESA and Donut than an actual authenticated review that was written by like real human hands. Like here, for example, where they say Aphelion is cinematic and that its traversal mechanics have depth, but they don't. It's just simple Uncharted climbing where you have to hit X a few times. You've seen this 100 times before, so why are you lying like this? The review then says, as you can see, that Aphelion is apparently so good that this reviewer wants the game to be turned into a feature film. Again, this just reads like ad placement and not authentic at all. Ultimately, they end up giving, as you can see there, and no, I'm not kidding, a 9.5 out of 10 to Aphelion. A game that this reviewer admits is short, is a walking simulator, features zero combat, and both characters play practically the same. And they also confirm, as you can see there in their own review, that the game is one of the best science fiction stories in any medium, which is again just crazy because not much of anything interesting happens at all in this game. The aliens are called Nemesis, even their name is generic, and there's nothing here that you really haven't seen before. The main character, Ariane, has also gotten a lot of flack online because her character design is like the most bland ESG corporate slop character that I've seen in a while in a video game. Just a sickly, skinny woman with a shaved head. This is made by a Western studio, alright, you can bet on that one. And circling this back to Leigh Alexander, the writer of this game, they hate their own audience. As it says in that infamous article here, game culture, as we know it, is kind of embarrassing. It's not even culture. It's buying things, spackling over memes and in-jokes repeatedly, and it's getting mad on the internet. How are you someone we should take seriously when it comes to writing video game stories or speaking on them, when you believe the entire concept of a gamer as a person is condensed down to just buying things, as this Leigh Alexander says? So it's not a culture, really. Remind me how many different cons exist out there, people cosplaying, people streaming, the fandoms surrounding certain games like a Mass Effect, a Marvel Rivals, a Baldur's Gate, and more even, and none of this, in Leigh's opinion, is culture. It's just buying things, apparently. Again, this is the person who wrote this Aphelion game. As a reminder, this is done by Donut, a developer already that has been on the brink of bankruptcy a few times, because their games, like the Life is Strange ones and more, aren't doing as well as they would hope that they would. The crazy part is the more you read into Leigh Alexander's now infamous article, you start to realize the gaming industry has really never changed. Not in 2014, and definitely not even now. These people still think this way about the very demographics that they are meant to service. Here's how the article starts. I often say I'm a video game culture writer, but lately I don't know exactly what that means. Game culture as we know it is kind of embarrassing. And then they say what I've already said. It's young men queuing with plush mushroom hats and backpacks and jutting promo poster roles. Queuing passionately for hours at events around the world to see the things that marketers want them to see. To find out whether they should buy things or not, they don't know how to dress or behave. Television cameras pan across these listless queues and often catch the expressions of people who don't quite know why they themselves are standing there. Wow, great way of just personifying the people that you're meant to be speaking to, Leigh. Calling them consumer pigs and NPCs. That's a really good way for you to, get their trust, I guess. But again, writer of failed game Aphelion, by the way. Leigh Alexander then says this next. Games culture is a petri dish of people who know so little about how human social interaction and professional life works that they can concoct online wars about social justice or game journalism ethics straight-faced and cause genuine human consequences. Because of video games lately, I often find myself wondering what I'm even doing here, and I know I'm not alone. All of us should be better than this. You'd think this was written today, but nope, this is a 12-year-old article. This is how games journalists always think for the most part. Even now, they hate us. They hate having to speak or consider themselves as even being a part of a similar community that involves any one of us. And these people think that they're better than you. Why is that? I guess it might be access, because it's, how they get to write an article on a website, maybe that runs ads that differs from like us. Somehow they believe in their own infinite stupidity. This means that they're just simply better than you in every way. And that we are just nothing to these people, which makes the existence of Aphelion like even more perplexing. Because why then 12 years removed are you writing a game, Leigh Alexander? It can't be because you're passionate about it, because you hate your audience anyways. You admitted it. So the only reason Aphelion exists is because the ESA threw you guys a check. Maybe your politics aligned, and thus your game starring a malnourished bald-headed woman came into existing, peaking at 219 players on Steam. Leigh Alexander then says this is what the rest of the world knows about your industry. This and headlines about billion-dollar war simulators, or those junkies with the touchscreen candies, that's it. You should absolutely be better than this. You don't want to be divisive. Who's being divided? Except for people who are okay with an infantilized cultural desert of bad behavior, and people who aren't. What is there to debate? Right, let's say it's a vocal minority that's not representative of most people. Most people from indies to industry leaders are mortified, furious, disheartened at the direction the industry conversation has taken in the past few weeks. It's not like there are reputable outlets publishing rational articles in favor of the troll's side. This Leigh is clearly alluding to Gamergate, specifically the first iteration of it, which was funnily enough started due to the ethics of games journalism proving that there is favoritism in blatant political sightings. And remember, this article was made even before the orange guy got elected too. So the beauty of this article, and why I wanted to cover it today alongside Aphelion, is because Leigh Alexander perfectly encapsulates how the absolute hatred that games journalists have towards their viewer base is directly responsible for their own downfall and their loss of credibility within the very space that they're operating within. Let me read you this part. Don't give press to the harassers. Don't blame an entire industry for a few bad apples, yet disclaiming liability is clearly no help. Game websites with huge community hubs whose fans are often associated with blunt Twitter hate mobs sort of shrug. They say things like, we delete the really bad stuff, what else can we do? And those people don't represent our community, but actually those people do represent your community. That's what your community is known for, whether you like it or not. When you decline to create or to curate a culture in your spaces, you're responsible for what spawns in the vacuum. That's what's been happening to games. Beautifully put, Leigh. Actually, kudos to you. You are absolutely right that the inability to curate a culture in spaces is actually directly responsible for what spawns in that vacuum, as you said, but it actually goes both ways. Because for too long, the game's journalists existed and spoke openly and hateful towards their viewer base. This article reflects and confirms that 100%. You don't view gamers as people. You see them almost as subhuman even. You don't view the people you cater to as even being your equal. Instead, you believe that you exist in a plane of existence above those around you somehow. As if these games journalists actually think they're like fourth or fifth dimensional beings that exist above our pathetic third dimensional existence that we all operate within. As if because a publisher sends them a free game code or they get a swag bag with some DLC codes at some event, it somehow makes them better and more legitimate than you or me. Look, I get free codes too. I have a YouTube following, but I don't consider myself above anybody because I'm not. I'm just a guy. All I want to do is drink coffee, walk my dogs, play video games, and sleep. I never have, nor I will believe just because of my channel here on YouTube that I'm somehow above anyone else, because it's not true. Anyone who thinks they're better than someone else because of something stupid like that should not be taken seriously ever. But Leigh is right. You are responsible for what is created in that vacuum and the very footsteps that would inevitably lead to gaming journalism losing its relevance, its prestige, and worth is directly correlating with how people like this Leigh and others operate or even believe. It's because of your own hubris, Leigh. Like your ugly characters in Aphelion who are running away from Earth due to climate change, you continue to run away from the fact that the very landscape of your profession was decided when you and people like you decided that they were above those that they were meant to serve. Ironically, like the story you wrote in Aphelion, the gaming industry as a whole has become as desolate and uninhabitable as the planet of Persephone in the story story that you wrote that takes place on. A planet devoid of life and frozen over. Incredible how something you wrote like this can haunt you for so long, but this is why your actions have consequences. Because you're LARPing, not as a games journalist or a writer, but as someone who anyone should take seriously or want to support by writing things like this in the first place. It's no wonder why Donut's financials are in the ditch. Their financials were published by Actis News, as you can see there. The majority of that report tries to paint Donut as a publisher and developer that is doing better than they used to be. However, when you start to look deeply into it, the cracks do start to show. At one point, as you can see there, Donut states that they need cash flow as soon as possible to ensure the future of their games continue to exist. In other words, they need to swindle someone into helping keep their doors open is what that actually reads as. Because again, Aphelion is not going to cover its costs at all. There's no way. The game hasn't even sold anywhere near 50,000 copies, and I'm being generous here. It's likely even lower than that in reality, and games like Aphelion are a lot like other games too, such as like Dustborn and more. These sorts of games that only exist because government programs are paying for their development entirely. They don't exist to make money. These kind of things exist to just change minds and transform the landscape by being used in slideshows and bullet point presentations, by overpaid executives talking to other culturally out of touch people about how we need more of this to exist, when in actuality there's no audience for it. Aphelion will be forgotten like come a month from now, likely even before that. There was zero marketing for this game too. Hell, if you go look it up on Metacritic even, the current critic score is sitting at a 64, as you can see there, and the user score is even lower, but there you go. It's incredible how there is now like a new genre of games being made these days that are really hard to quantify as a single genre. Stuff like Dustborn, Aphelion, and things like that, I could only combine them into a new genre that I would just call games for no one, because that's really what these sorts of games are in the end. These are not games meant to be enjoyed or replayed or like discussed. They're just the sort of games that some liberal arts teacher is going to force upon their students to play or watch cutscenes from in class, in order for no other reason than to just push a narrative onto their impressionable minds. There is no other reason why these games exist otherwise, because nobody would play Aphelion out of curiosity, because it's a game made for no one. If you love space games, you're far better off playing Mass Effect or like even Star Ocean. At least then you're going to have fun playing. Is it any wonder why these propaganda pieces are always so light on gameplay too? Because I've been noticing that a lot. My only guess is because they're games that are being designed for people who don't play games. Instead, they just exist so that some old lady who's like a teacher or something can play it in front of a board of suits or kids in a classroom. These games are just designed to be presented as Trojan horses, to make people believe that what they push, whether it's diversity or whatever else, to convince other suckers to give a place like Donut more cash flow so they can continue making the next walking simulator nothing game, where they can put more ugly characters doing nothing, again, in a game that sells to nobody. As Leigh Alexander said in that article, the goal is to remove gaming as something targeted at young men specifically. Here's what they said. Yet in 2014, the industry has changed. We still think angry young men are the primary demographic for commercial video games. Yet average software revenues from the commercial space have contracted massively year on year, with only a few sterling brands enjoying predictable success. It's clear that most of the people who drove those revenues in the past have grown up either out of games or into more fertile spaces, where small and diverse titles can flourish, where communities can quickly spring up around creativity, self-expression, and mutual support rather than consumerism. There are new audiences and new creators alike there. Traditional gaming is slowing off culturally and economically like the carapace of a bug. Like, this is insane propaganda. You can see Leigh was laying the foundation for this as early as 2014. Young men are not your audience. Young men are over. They are nothing. They are nobody, apparently. We must make games for wine moms and school teachers and marketing managers instead. This is how you led to the whole catastrophic downfall of 2020 to 2024, man. When you look at the games made that were made with Leigh Alexander's ideas in mind, it's just flop after flop, a graveyard of games for nobody. And not only are they a waste of money, but time to play too. They're all designed to force behaviors in order to ensure that the games industry and their investors come to the same conclusion of, you know what, maybe gamers are over. Let's cater to non-gamers with our games instead. And then you wonder why the games industry is in such shambles, why no one trusts Hollywood anymore, and why jobs are evaporating in these sectors. Because the content being made is not connecting. It's just propaganda gray slop being spewed out of the rectum of some feminist who hates the people they are tasked with serving. This perception alone that Leigh Alexander and games like Aphelion represent are enough of a perception for most people to erode their trust with these sorts of talking mouthpieces instead, like all of these articles and games. They are just designed not to be played, but to talk down to, dismiss, or misrepresent the demographics that actually exist, which is you and me. And because of how often this has happened, specifically specifically since 2014 and onward, it becomes an accumulated opinion of many that these institutions and the people tasked with being honest with us are not in fact doing what they were swore that they would do. They're not being honest. They are just talking heads for the forced behaviors. This is why people don't rely on single outlets anymore. Why things like content creators and such have risen the way that they have, because it means the coverage of these games are no longer being gatekept by your Leigh Alexanders or the Greg Millers or whatever other shills you want to add to the pile. Instead, the existence of independent creators is competing directly with the narrative that these people have spent years unchallenged to make you believe are true. And because what they're saying feels weird and out of sync, which is because it is, you then start to notice immediately that something is off here. And this ends up creating something new, a credibility gap, which is growing because now people can compare what they see, what they play, or what they're told against other sources, and they're starting to realize that, this doesn't line up, and then that trust then starts to slip. It's not really about one-sided review, but that what people are looking for these days is transparency and alignment with what's actually going on. They're not asking you to be perfect, they just want you to be honest. But the systems that these types exist in the journalists and the shills, which are many of them, that system creates pressure that these outlets believe that they need to reinforce in order to have their access, because that access, in their opinion, is what legitimizes their influence. Not realizing it's that you being transparent and honest, that's what real influence is, but the tone and how they say things. That is just destroying any goodwill that they would have had all by themselves. They did it, man. This is why Aphelion is important, but not for any reasons the ESA or Leigh Alexander would think it is. Instead, it's because Aphelion is a mirror, not just of what this game is, which is propaganda, but for the relationship between the media and you, the audience. This is why we live in an era now where every review or take is being challenged. Not because people hate journalism outright, but because they know deep down they can't rely on it the same way that they used to. And that changes everything, in a good way actually, because we now live in a space where the role of the media is not to show us things that we may like. The role of the media now for a long time is just to tell us how to think. But that connection is broken, and people have taken notice, and now that they have that insight, they're not going to forget anytime soon. And that will anger these people more than anything, because propaganda and the hate articles can only work if the people being sold the lie are believing it to be true, and well, they're not biting anymore. If gamers aren't your audience anymore, then get out of games. Go do something else. But if you ask me, gaming journalism doesn't have to be your source of truth, because gaming journalism is over, and it's their fault. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you'd like to, and take care of yourselves.